Welcome to Secrets of Successful Advisors with Ken Heyman, the podcast where we dive deep into the habits, mindsets, and strategies that set top financial advisors apart. I'm Scott Tatum, and today I'll be talking with Ken to explore his thoughts on future shaping. Before we begin, I'd like to draw your attention to an important service from our sponsor, Total Family. For those financial advisors that work with ultra high net worth clients, that when they're working on legacy planning, find the clients getting stuck. I think you may find the service that Total Family offers really interesting. For more information, visit Total Family at totalfamily.io. That's totalfamily.io. Okay, let's get our listeners in the right frame of mind. You can't dive deeply into the psyche of clients while dwelling in our busy world. So let's leave that outside world behind for 25 minutes and look deep inside human behavior to explore the science of clients, setting instincts aside so that insights can guide. And Ken, I want to direct those insights to the initial courtship of a new prospect. And specifically today, you want to talk about a tactic that can really change the trajectory of a prospect engagement. To get started with this, we really need to explore the nature of how you curate an experience. And this is something that you've taught me over the decades. You know, you did a lot of work on understanding trust, and more recently, you've done work on pricing. And in both of those, you've really emphasized the value of an experience and how the listener understands and feels an experience. So let's start there. Give our listeners a deeper understanding of what an experience is like.
Well, Scott, this is the kind of the hallmark and the value proposition of the Advisor Institute and the work that we do on this podcast, The Secrets of Successful Advisors. It's really building tactics and then linking those tactics together into strategies that are rooted in an understanding of human behavior and based on insights from the behavioral sciences. And we always want to start with the science of clients that informs our behaviors. And unfortunately, too often, in my opinion, advisors are racing to the tactic. You know, oh, don't tell me about all the behavioral economic stuff. I don't need to know that. I just need to know the words to say. And unfortunately, that creates disembodied interactions where the advisor isn't being authentic. They don't understand what they're trying to accomplish. And the quality of the interaction and ultimately the quality of the experience is affected by that, and not affected in a good way. An advisor who to the client or the prospective client looks like they're simply going through some kind of motion is not advancing the quality of relationship. It really does require authentic experiences. Now, you started by saying, before we can look at this particular tactic that is in fact an experience, we have to understand, so what's the big deal about experiences? And there's a really simple distinction I can make from the psychological side of things that I think is very powerful for advisors. And in fact, I'd much rather an advisor dig into this idea than the actual tactic, even though the tactic is very powerful and because of that, very seductive. But this idea of experiences really sums up the entire work of the advisor, from the first encounter with a person that's never met them before to the last conversation you have over the course of your relationship. Every interaction is an experience. And experiences can be kind of pedestrian, they can be boring, they can be negative. Experiences can be positive. And in fact, for the same person, two different people can be in the same experience and have vastly different emotional reactions. I remember being in a mathematics class once, and one of my roommates in college was quite a gifted mathematician. He was in heaven wrestling with the professor on the issues, and I was absolutely bored out of my mind and then distressed by how hard the context was. That same person, had he sat down with me in one of the deep dives into human processing, would have been absolutely bored out of his mind, and I would, of course, have been in hog heaven. We value different things, so experiences are unique to each individual. But for all human beings, experiences can be understood and are experiences either a positive, additive, attractive, interesting, valued thing, or they are negative things that the human being wants to avoid. Most of us have the experience of dental procedures being pretty darn negative. And but many of us have the experience of having a lovely dinner out at a lovely restaurant as being very positive. Both are experiences. And it is through experiences that humans build their emotional reaction to the world. The problem for advisors is if they're not nuanced in their understanding of what makes up a positive, engaging, trust building experience. And there's an interesting observation I can make because this is very common in financial services. I was at a conference with one of our major clients, a major distribution company in financial services. And they had just published a new resource that had 127 different services or deliverables available from that firm. And they had published this in this beautifully illustrated brochure. You could print a brochure out, or you could send it to somebody digitally. 127 different items. And of course, the person who had designed it, the person who had thought it up, the key executive that approved it, they all thought this was great because to them, this illustrated the firm's value. As a psychologist, I can tell you there's nothing about a brochure that is an experience of value. Every one of the items in the brochure is an output or deliverable that could lead to value. But the human being who's engaging the financial advisor or engaging that company for their financial services is not valuing the output. What they're valuing is the way the output makes them feel. So really simple understanding of experiences is that an experience is happening when the human being is feeling something in their chest or in their viscera. And that feeling, if it's a feeling of dread, oh, I have to go to the dentist, that's an experience. You do not want to cause that in financial services. You do not want to cause that in the early stages of a relationship. You want to cause feelings of what? Confidence, comfort, perhaps excitement, opportunism, the positive, optimistic perspective on the world, a sense of the future being bright and attractive and desirable. You want to create all of this. And in fact, if you think about it, every conversation, every response you make, every email you send, every quarterly report, every annual review, they're all experiences. And those experiences can be designed to create those positive responses internally, or numerous positive responses. If you look, of course, at our program, the Effective Client Review, which is available from the Advisor Institute, what we've done there is we've linked together several powerful, positive experiences that an advisor can curate in the first or in that annual meeting with the client. And rather than, as you've described it, Scott, in some of your lectures, just having Groundhog Day again, like that movie with Bill Murray, where our annual review is just a nice report on the numbers on the piece of paper, we're curating an experience for this client that builds the relationship stronger. Every advisor would benefit from understanding that each encounter, from the first encounter throughout every following encounter, is a powerful opportunity to create an experience and to design and curate very particular kinds of experiences that continue to create these positive emotional responses. This industry, what we are doing as retail financial advisors, is not primarily about economics. It's not primarily about numbers. It's not even primarily about investing. It is curating the experiences that those outputs cause in the human being. And if we understand that, it changes everything about the way we think about our conversations with our clients.
So let's take a look at one of the more fraught circumstances when it comes to setting up experiences, because advisors, I think, are pretty comfortable with that client they've had for a decade or two. But when they've just met somebody and they know that they need to talk about money and dreams, I think they can get a little bit worried about how can I curate an experience? How soon can I do it? And I know that you've got a tactic that just fits beautifully into that early meeting with a prospect that you're really interested in. So why don't you kind of reveal this tactic about future shaping?
Well, that's exactly the tactic we're talking about here, Scott, and the description of it or the title of it basically is the tactic. But obviously, we need to unpack this a little bit more. Let's look at what this first meeting or this first encounter, this first organized encounter with the client. That you've met them somewhere, you've had a couple of conversations maybe, and they've decided to come into the office to actually start a formal discovery and inquiry, kind of kicking the tires, seeing if you're the kind of advisor that they want to work with. So that is fraught. And it's especially fraught if the advisor misunderstands how value is created in the mind and emotions of the client. Because it would be really easy in that meeting if you don't understand the importance of curating these positive emotional experiences to go grab that 127 point brochure and say, well, let me just show you a few of the things we can do for you. And let me give you an example of our financial plan. And let me show you a portfolio we built for somebody else. And look at the size of my team. Isn't this amazing? And all these outputs and the photographs and all these things out there and over there. And of course, the advisor has pride of professionalism. Of course, they have pride of what their business, what they built, their offices, the team, all the services they provide. But a picture of the team or meeting the team itself doesn't cause that deep emotional experience. Maybe pleasant meeting, maybe you have coffee and tea with everybody, but it doesn't cause a profound sense of confidence. It doesn't profound change your perception of comfort and optimism about the future. What you want are experiences that actually create emotional reactions inside the human being and are experiences that lead that human being to have a set of operating assumptions about their relationship with you. So, one experience that we teach advisors to do, and I've taught this to lots and lots of advisors over the years, is in the first meeting, do a little exercise on future shaping. And specifically, the exercise looks like this. And what I think the value of this is to learn the exercise, but then to learn it in the context of what it's actually doing that's so powerful. Because I think a future shaping exercise really helps advisors understand not only how to do that piece, but it does reveal some of the dynamics of this larger concept of curating experiences. So in a future shaping conversation, you sit down with a client, you're in that first meeting, maybe you've had some small talk, there's been a little exploration, maybe you've done some gentle discovery, ask them a little bit about previous advisory relationships, maybe the advisor they're currently working with, why they're there, what the precipitating event is, and talk a little. Maybe you've done an exercise or two to help them understand how you do this. We have a whole discovery exercise, very lightweight discovery exercise. It's very powerful in helping advisors create that sense of the client being understood and the client's sense of what they're looking for being somewhat brought out into the open. We're now openly having this conversation about what the client is needing and looking for. So at that halfway point, maybe in that first meeting, the advisor can do this lovely little future shaping exercise in which they say to the client, tell you what I'd like to do to help me continue to understand what it is you're looking for. I'd like to do a little mental exercise. And with your permission, could I set up a scenario and just give me some reactions to the scenario I'm setting up as a way of helping me to understand at a deeper, more profound level what it is you're trying to accomplish, what you're looking for in your work with an advisor. So here's the scenario I'd like to set up. It's 3 years from now. And by the way, you can pick 3 years or 5 years. It's interesting to pick an odd number. For some reason, odd numbers are more impactful in the human brain than even numbers. I don't think anybody actually knows why. But let's say you pick the number, it's 3 years from now. That's a good chunk of time. And you and I are sitting in a restaurant, and I've called you up and invited you to this restaurant. And we're waiting for our order to come. And we both have a glass of wine. We're swirling our wine, getting ready to make a toast. And I've invited you out because we have had an excellent experience over the previous 3 years. And we're here to celebrate the fact that this has been a great working relationship and that we've accomplished actually more than you were expecting in the work together. And so we're 3 years out, and that's the context. That's where we're sitting. What I'd like you to do right now, sitting here with me, is tell me what happened in those 3 years. What specific things happened in those 3 years that brought us to this place where we're celebrating this great success? And now you sit back and allow the client to say, well, obviously what you're looking for is tell me what success looks like to you. Now, they're not going to be able to answer it right out of the box. They're going to have to settle in, go inward inside their thinking patterns, go inward inside their imaginations, go inward inside and create some fantasies. But all of it is in the context of, if I'm working with this financial advisor, what is he or she doing? What are the experiences I'm having that would cause me to say this is a successful experience? And they're going to start out with the easiest, most available one. Oh, we had great performance, etc. But the advisor just keeps pushing and saying, okay, but what else? What else would matter? What else would make it great? What else would lift this experience up head and shoulders above other advisors? Tell me what it needs to look like for you not just to be satisfied with me, but for me to have earned the status so that you are a raving fan about what I'm doing. And for each person, it's going to be unique. But now what they're doing is they're reacting to the sense of, I'm in the future in this highly positive place. And now they begin to put the puzzle pieces together of how they got there, the steps that took them there. And so now the whole future from this moment forward to that 3-year period starts to get populated. And guess who's in every one of the pictures? The advisor who asked to have the conversation and asked to create this imaginary scenario. Now, it should be obvious that that is a very powerful 5-minute conversation to have with somebody.
So, from somebody who is not as versed in the behavioral sciences as you are, I can just, my radar says, oh, that's cool. That's really neat. But there have to be reasons why that exercise works so well and why it's also safe to do with someone that you really haven't had a lot of time with. So what are the dynamics that make that both effective and comfortable for this person that we're really just starting to develop a sense of intimacy with?
Well, the safety part is an important piece that you raise. Obviously, doing that conversation randomly with a stranger is not something that where you have enough of a framework, but we have to remember the context. And with human beings, context means a lot. They came in to see you. They are in the process of considering working with you. That means they're thinking about their future in some way. Now, they may not be thinking about it in the level of detail that I just described, and in fact, very few people would. But the fact that you invite them to think forward and say to them, I want to know what it would look like for this to be more successful than you even hoped for, and tell me what that looks like. And if having that person tell you those details on the surface level is incredibly valuable, because At that point, if you start taking notes, what you're getting is the playbook for how this person wants things to be. And again, you can push on some of it. So, am I in our relationship? Do we talk once a year? Do we talk once a quarter? Do we talk once a month? Are we talking once a week? And the client can look at that and say, well, I think once a month would be great. My current advisor and I only talk, once a quarter, maybe not even. He seems reluctant to do that, but once a week seems like a little much, right? And so you start getting their frequencies and things, and you can explore lots of things about it, right? That am I calling you and giving you a rundown on the markets? Or is that something that you like to have in detail? What does it look like for me to really be that kind of advisor? So you can get all the practical stuff, and they can begin thinking and setting up the criteria. And by the way, down the road, a year from now, you can say, remember we had that conversation, and when we were in that originating meeting, and we talked about what you were looking for. Well, I've been trying to follow that. How am I doing? Is this fitting? You see how it just continuously reveals your concern about them, your care for them, your respect of them, your focus on them. So it's at surface, it's a great exercise just to populate your understanding of what's going on, and it fits the context, right? So again, using your idea in the early stages like a romantic experience, if you go out with somebody for the first time, right? The two of you have never gone out before, it's a blind date, and you try to have that conversation with this other person and say, well, if we were to get really serious and go forward in time, what would it look like? That's way too early to have that conversation. The context doesn't give you the space to do it. But if you've been dating for 6 months and you're starting to feel that this is serious and you're both starting to have that kind of, we're resonating with each other, asking the question, what would it look like? What does it look like daily, weekly, monthly? How many trips are we taking? And what is our relationship with each other's families? What is it? What's on your mind about what this would look like? Because this feels different to me than anything else I've ever done with somebody, or it feels similar to my previous very serious relationships. What a wonderful conversation to have, and what a wonderful conversation to lead. But there's one more piece, and
Okay.
that is the unconscious piece. And this is where curating experiences gets even more powerful, because in the process of this person going forward and following your instructions, go forward 3 years, tell me what we've been doing for this next several years. What they've done in that process is they've populated their own future with a series of experiences that have you in it. So you, as the advisor, are now a figure in their future. And that helps the unconscious follow your desire, which is, I want to establish a working relationship with you, a consultative relationship with you that's going to extend off into the future. Well, now you've had them pre-experience what that would look like. And now they bring that pattern back in time, but they still have an anchor out there 3 years from now. And there you are. And you're having this wonderful celebration. And now as they look forward to engaging you, that picture is still in their mind. And that is something that's causing them to make sense of you in a different way. It's also causing them to have a sense of familiarity. Instead of it feeling like, oh, we just met, there's this sense of you're there in all these other places. Look, this is very subtle. It's very powerful, but it's also very effective as a way of communicating to the individual, I want to be in this process with you. I want to journey with you. I want to get to that point of destination. And so if we think about experiences like that create these incredibly warm feelings of gratification, satisfaction, excitement, future anticipation, confidence, optimism about the future. We think about the experiences in the chest of the human being. It's not your list of deliverables. It's their experiences going forward. And this is where understanding experiences and being an advisor who's thinking about the way you communicate with clients much more strategically and on the basis of these insights from the behavioral sciences is so powerful for helping you build the kind of collaborative consulting relationship that you're actually looking to create.
Ken, that's just such a wonderful tactic and so perfectly placed because advisors know, I think they know the value of those experiences, but finding something that you can bring up so early in a relationship that shows such earnestness, but it's done in such a safe way. It just doesn't really have an opportunity to be misinterpreted because it works on the conscious level, but what you also bring out is how beautifully it works on the subconscious level. So I think it's just a wonderful tactic, and I'm really glad you shared it with our listeners today. So look, as all of you return to your busy world of running your practices, let me remind you that we would love your ideas for future podcast topics. If you've got one, just go to Ken's LinkedIn page or my LinkedIn page and message us with your idea for a future podcast. Look, if we use those ideas, we'll be happy to give you a shout out when we do so. That's a wrap on this edition of Secrets of Successful Advisors with Ken Heyman, the podcast where we explore the science of clients, setting instincts aside so that insights can guide.